Hi, everybody. Welcome to a discussion about self-collaring. For those who don't know, self-collaring is the thing that people say they're doing to themselves. And we hopefully will have some people who can talk about it and defend the side of the self-collaring. For the most part, yes, there's a bad history with some of the terms we have in this lifestyle. We're going to ignore that for this evening and just move on with what is accepted. That, of course, would be terms like slave and collaring. Now, none of this is meant in a bad way or to kind of make anyone feel any certain way. However, these are accepted terms. And yes, while that's a conversation we are trying to have in the next couple of years, we're not there where we're removing anything or not acknowledging. But I did want to acknowledge that some of these words may seem a little triggering and even insensitive. Please don't take any of that to heart. We're just talking about what is an accepted form within our lifestyle. Of course, the collar generally represents a total power exchange dynamic that is worn by the submissive partner and is showing ownership of said partner to the other partner. However, some people wear it not just for a TPE, but just to actually show a relationship with someone else. They are collared with someone else. It's sort of like a wedding ring almost in a BDSM way. And there are people who wear BDSM slave collar and actually as well participate in the whole monogamy marriage thing. And not all marriages have to be monogamous, but by default they sort of are. And they wear wedding rings. So you can also have it as a fashion sense. And more recently, some people have begun to wear them as Treadwives did something with it, and there are day collars. So there's a lot with collaring, but tonight we're going to specifically begin, hopefully, a conversation just about collaring. Now that we got everything back online, hopefully we can have you. If you guys want to join us from TikTok over on YouTube, you can be a guest on the show. I am still waiting for my co-host to show up. Hopefully my co-host will be here sooner than later. I'm doing the best I can, people. I'm doing the best I can. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please hit me up. We had a total failure a few minutes ago of basically everything. So we had to restart on our YouTube channel. So welcome back. We are here now. We're waiting for people to join us in the moment. I'm going to hopefully send out another invite. I think one of the co-hosts of the show, I really hope didn't confuse it with tomorrow. We're going to do the best we can. We are live. I'm trying to send the signal wide as it is, but we are going to be switching off. This is not our best live as we have 0 people watching, which is not common for our Kink Educator channel. I have no idea what they're mad about, but clearly they are. So we're going to tag in while we wait our other channel and see if we can't get the fire started with some people. So let's do this. Let's get a live going. And we're going to probably sadly retreat off. This is not going to be one of our best. Last one of the summers, it's not going out. Rosie has entered. We're going to talk to them about it now. Rosie, do remember that our YouTube audience never saw the original video, so as you enter, they are not necessarily aware of what we were talking about. I tried to fill them in on the basics, and we're going to be going live on our other TikTok channel in just a minute. And I got to actually put in the name. Self-collaring, question.
Are you asking me?
No, I'm trying to tell the tick like I did the speech to text, but it always does collar wrong. There we go, self-collaring. So we're gonna sign off on our Kink Educator profile in just a minute. I don't see a notification on TikTok. I only get a notification here. If you ever have that problem, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, the simplest way to solve that is to go to the profile and look at it. There is a spot on it where you can literally actually make sure that you're notified for everything that we post. We have 1 person watching right now on our Kink Educator channel, which is insane to me, which means we're probably on a shadow ban. We did it. We're inviting in the Kink-Edu audience. Chiniqua, am I getting that right? I just want to make sure my pronunciations are usually shit. So please correct me. If you want to be part of this live, you can come in on our YouTube. Just go ahead and hit that link above. If not, please leave us your comments, your concerns, your questions. And we're talking about self-collaring. So I'm going to pass this to Rosie for a minute and ask Rosie her thoughts on self-collaring.
I don't personally have an issue with it, but I will say in the community, if you are playing publicly, it can cause kind of like a rift in what is allowed and what isn't when it comes to asking you to play.
Yeah, that is certainly true. It is, I mean, I came into this lifestyle when a collar meant, like, you only wore a collar if you were owned. And it was a huge status symbol in the communities. However, it got watered down pretty quickly, even back in the 90s when it became very popular, thanks to a Trent Reznor video, F Me Like an Animal. I'm not going to go the full bout because we are on our TikTok audience as well, even though we seem to not be being told if anyone's watching. Who knows what that's about. But we are live right now, so welcome in our cool kids and cool cats. And we're going to talk. See, I don't know how to defend self-collaring because to me, self-collaring doesn't really hit the vibe, considering how I've been told to appreciate self-collaring. I mean, collaring itself. It is that thing that you earn between you and another person. And how could you be self-collaring yourself? Did you build a dynamic with yourself? And I know it seems like I'm being facetious, but I'm generally questioned by that. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that anyone who claims to be self-collared is doing anything wrong necessarily to the lifestyle. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying you're self-collaring, but I do think it waters down kink. I'm afraid that it's one of those things that isn't really something that represents the lifestyle. I think it's something someone did and put it on the internet, and this became like a book talk moment that a lot of people found some comfort in. And I really wish someone else was here to explain why self-collaring was good, and I'm sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. But
So
I don't. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think one of the things I've heard from people who do self-collar is that it is a ability to like hold themselves accountable, and that's like a memento to do so when it comes to giving themselves self-discipline in doing daily life tasks when they don't have a dominant around.
That's fair. I also have seen, though, and I feel like some people have almost hijacked collaring in itself this year. And we're not going to get into it, but with trad wives and the whole debate about things like that, I am so confused about the whole thing. Luckily, Wandering Alice is going to be able to join us right now, and maybe Wandering Alice can be a lot better than me. Rosie, your chick is very loud and very cute, but would you mind muting when you're not talking? So, because someone had just mentioned.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Well, Alice.
Hold on, I'll put her in the bathroom.
Okay.
Hello.
I got nervous. I thought I was going to have to do this on my own. You missed it. The internet crapped out again. The last.
Oh, okay. I was wondering. I'm like, it feels like I checked it right around 6. I'm like, this feels a little silent right now.
Well, TikTok, first off, never approved us to do the live. I'd waited days.
Oh.
They never said anything. So when we went live now, we have really no audience. Crazy as that sounds. So I can't go live on that. It just didn't allow it, which I was
wow.
Like, of course. So I waited to see if it would approve in the last minute. And I'm like, most people know we go at 6:30. Everyone's going to be fine because no one had signed up for it. I know you knew. So then we started here. And we started on Kink-Edu, and everything went wrong. We lost it. And it's funny because we started this summer with the same problem. And we're ending on the same problem. That is crazy coincidence, but I'll take it. So I kind of explained what collaring was, the TPE power exchange, how that's originally how it started. The biggest thing that I think is a good takeaway is that most people consider that it started in leather due to the dog situations. There's a thing called the leather dog pup, actually, to be clear.
Pup. Yep.
Pup, and that's where the collars first began, people think, in the lifestyle. It's always hard because we're in oral history, but that's the first time I know of it actually being documented, because there are actually documentation with actual with the leather community, because there are a lot of documentary crews, and
Yeah.
that collar definitely comes over from leather to the lifestyle. We did talk about how unfortunately there's a bad history with some of the things we're going to talk about, like master slave, and collaring in itself can be problematic and triggering for some people, and I apologize, but it is a normal conversation in this lifestyle, and it is not meant to offend anyone, and is used in very different contexts. I did say that collaring has become a fashion statement. It has been sort of hijacked by people in this last year, especially with trad wives and things like that. It's been crazy. So we're here to just talk about self-collaring. I covered the basics. If you want to put anything else about collaring, and then I'll give you my argument against self-collaring, and we'll go from there. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. I mean, I think you basically covered it mostly with collaring. Like, yeah, it may have originally started in leather, but at this point, it's very commonplace across the lifestyle, for better or for worse. You're going to come across varying levels of intensity behind the idea, I'll put it. You're going to have some people who don't think it's really that big of a deal, and some people who are going to take it more serious than some folks could even imagine. It varies greatly. And then, of course, you have people who just wear it as a fashion statement.
Now, to be clear, at one point in this lifestyle, they did carry a lot of weight. It was absolutely, and we just talked about this a few minutes ago, but just to clarify, because Alice is here, it was, you didn't wear a collar if you weren't collared. Collared was a thing. It was an engagement ring. It was a wedding band for BDSM. And that has now faded, clearly. It is used more liberally. And we've now, in my opinion, watered it down to self-collaring. To me, collaring, if you say you're collared within the specs of the lifestyle, you have built and earned a dynamic where collaring can exist. Self-collaring, to me, feels like being extra. It feels like, we've talked about this, the vanillification of the lifestyle. And while I wouldn't call this vanillification, definitely not, I would say maybe it's a little vanilla, a little between kink and vanilla life. It seems like people trying to take something and make it something it's not. Now, that's my argument and stance how this has started. Me and M privately discussed this, and they said some powerful things. So I'm here to have a big discussion. We're going to talk about it. And again, I'm not advocating to get rid of this. I just think it might not hit the way people think it's hitting. And I'd like to have the conversation. So I'm going to pass the floor to Alice, because Alice took offense to some of the things I said about it. And so go for it.
Yeah, so I think part of it is it comes down to your personal take on how intense collaring is. If you're one of those that falls in the boat of it's basically a marriage, you could also approach self-collaring or self-owned sub as kind of almost a type of celibacy to some extent, if you want, in the not getting in a dynamic that you are focusing on yourself. I've seen it used in that way. I have seen it used also in a sense of folks who struggle with self-care in a kind of it is a head themselves task and stuff, and using that submissive servicey headspace to kind of just take care of themselves or anything they need to do. So it can be in conflict with the very strict idea of like a collar basically being a kinky marriage, essentially.
Now, we should say that Obedience app, which is a great app, by the way, you guys should actually absolutely look into Obedience, the app. It helps you with your partner communicate, keep track of things, has now the option where everyone gets to have a partner well, you can have multiple partners, but it starts with a partner. But now you can actually have one just for yourself. There's like a self kind of almost, this is me and that. And I hear everything you're saying, but why call it something sacred, I guess? That's honestly where my sticking point on. Because to me, collaring was a whole ceremony. It was that moment. It was when you were committing to your dynamic and each other as sadist and masochist.
Yeah. I think because it shifted. I think the meaning has shifted. It's been watered down. It is not that level anymore. Like the more formal sense, which originally came from leather, in my opinion, of the in my research, like the idea of like the training collar building up to the like formal or permanent collar, a lot of that doesn't happen as much anymore either. So the like the level of meaning that it had even 20 years ago has gotten watered down.
Yeah, and to me, it and this goes even with pro doms. This is going to be something I'm sure I'm going to insult some people, but I always thought pro doms cheapened what our lifestyle, because you no longer, it became transactional as opposed to earning it through negotiation, communication, consent, all the things we love, all the things that are covered through D.I.P.E.R, did I ask permission, extensive representation. And I worry about the world that we're kind of building for ourselves in this lifestyle when we lose so much of what is important to us, I feel. And I think that's what bothers me about it, because I did come up in a different generation. And it's weird because I'm the age where I shouldn't have been exposed to that generation, believe it or not. Most people do not start in kink in an early age. As soon as I was 17, and in New York City, the legal age is 17 of consent. While we don't say this should be watched by a 17-year-old, it is legal consent in New York. I started at clubs at 17, didn't have an issue, and collaring mattered. It really, really mattered. By the way, this is Obedience App at your local Google Play or App Store. No, it's not an ad. We do have a 20% off code that you can find at our Kink-Edu campus, K-E-D-U-C-A-M-P-S. We are also going to say good night to our friends on the Kink Educator channel, because we've made it through live without getting in trouble. We don't want to push our luck because we're over 30 minutes. Lord knows they're aiming for us. So I'm going to say good night to you guys on Kink Educator. Join us over on Kink Educator on YouTube. We're going to continue with all of you on Kink-Edu's channel. So come on in for a few more minutes. So what you're basically saying, I guess, is, hey, you know, it was an important thing. It stopped being important now because of how watered down it was. And I can't necessarily disagree with you on that at all. That's very accurate. And we have actually complained about how watered down this lifestyle sometimes.
I can get on board with people who do self-collaring or the cell phone sub. Like, I can get behind that and support it. Me personally, I do still tend to lean towards that more I don't want to say it, that more oomph of a meaning behind it. Like, I have not been formally collared by anyone else, because for me it does carry quite a heavy weight behind it. I do still kind of look at it, accepting a collar from another person as kind of that kinky wedding ring, so to speak. So I have not been collared by another person in that capacity, but I have worn collars as more of the kinky fashion side of it. And that's the problem. Is originally I did not do that when I first got into the lifestyle in more of a community sense, about 12 years ago. But so many people use it more as an identifier of which side of the slash they're on than I am in a committed dynamic anymore. And it's I don't know, cultural shift, watering down. It's a hard debate.
Yeah, I mean, and it's semantics. Like, if someone were to tell me, oh, I'm self-collared, I wouldn't disrespect them to their face. I would just be like, oh, cool, and just let it roll off my back. This came up because it was on a video of mine, and I honestly spoke my feelings. Like, look, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I do think it's just cheapening like something deeper. It'd be like walking around with a wedding ring and not being married. And people do that, by the way. People do that.
I've done it to stop people from being creepy.
Yeah. So that is the thing too. But self-collaring, it's like self-care. It's taking care of yourself. And we did have a comment from Amazon Chick 54 who said, could it be compared to self-tying? And that's an interesting conversation.
Potentially, in that vein, I would go with it that way. It's a self-imposed type of structure or play.
But are you really playing? If you're self-collar, Rosie, what do you think? You got anything to add? I don't want to keep you out there in the quiet zone.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. I feel very much the same way as Alice. It's, for me, it's more of a when you're, I know a couple of people who have lost their dominant one way or another. And when that happens, they'll be like, okay, in order to keep my promises to my dom that I used to have or whatever, I'm going to go ahead and self-collar.
Yeah.
I've also used my collar as a I'm taken thing in creepy situations too.
And I see Alice's point right away in Catfish. Matt said that, in my opinion, self-collaring has its purpose because it sends the message, I'm claimed or don't want to be approached. But I don't think that actually says that anymore in our clubs, in our dungeons, because it is used as the fashion statement, especially through, there are many young people, I'm sure, who have no idea how serious this was taken, or people new to the lifestyle who went to Claire's, because there were Claire's. The handcuffs on the Reaper behind me literally has the necklace and handcuffs. I got that from Claire's.
Yeah.
Hot top, gold collars. Like, and there is a difference. And Alice had mentioned the kind of trying it out collars. I have gone through that in my dynamics, but also when I was younger, I've collared people that I should have never done it. I collared them before we really got to know each other. We started playing that way. This is when I was very young. They wanted to learn, and I told them, oh, well, I could collar you and make you mine. And then, and this is young. This is when I'm 20, and I was talking, but I hadn't built my own paperwork yet. I hadn't had the survey the way I wanted it. I had basic ideas. And I feel like saying self-collaring opens up these ideas to things that shouldn't really be there. It takes away the emphasis of communicating with someone else, building something else. I almost think that I hate to be the old guy in the room, but like kind of get off my lawn. That's not what collaring is. Because I think the more we water it down, the more trad wives we might see pop up. Because how can we defend how important collaring is if we're just letting people self-collar themselves so they can feel, as Rosie said, like, well, now people want to approach me when people are still approaching collar.
And it really doesn't work as a don't approach me, because really I feel like the only spaces you're going to find where a collar is given any kind of, I don't want authorities, reverence,
Yeah.
I think is the word I'm looking for, any kind of reverence, is going to be more on the leather side of things, whether it's new guard or old guard. It's going to be within house structures and such, which I'm not a fan of the old guard. The new guard, I'm still learning a lot about, just to understand everything under the Kinky umbrella better. But if you just go in a general kink club that isn't identified as leather or anything like that, people are going to assume you're just wearing it to mean that you're the submissive side of this.
Or kinky.
Yeah, I think
Or
the
kinky,
one
or
exception
switch.
is that very specific style of metal, like permanent collar.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's the one exception that will get, like, somebody to give you reverence. But pretty much any other style, nobody's going to pay attention to it as more than identifying as a submissive or a bottom.
And we forget the switches in those moments, unfortunately. We do. In Amazon Chick 54 says, my face tells people not to approach me. But it is true, and we're forgetting the whole pet play aspect of this too with the collaring, because that's a whole different ball of wax, right? The kitten collars, the pup collars, and the whole pup leather thing. There's some like real history in there. We're just talking about like the more classic, fashionable thing. And let me tell you how deep the slave collar goes. I was watching a Disney Channel thing. So my son was watching something, and they had an ad, just an ad for something that was upcoming, one of the like teen girls shows. And this girl clearly was in a band. She's wearing a slave collar. This is like a 14-year-old girl is wearing a slave collar on Disney Channel. Talk about having it taken from us and just watered. I mean, when Mickey Mouse is wearing it for views, we know that the slave collar has lost a lot of its reverence. And to what Wandering Alice had said, those ones that don't come off or has a locked collar almost became the replacement for just having a collar. It's like, no, look, I can't take this off. This is who we are at all times. We had some unfortunate comments gate kept over on our TikTok as always. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. But I mean, and again, I don't think anyone's hurting anyone by self-collaring. I just feel like it's another one of those watered down moments. Now, I promised Em I would bring up her counterpoint to me. Em had pointed out that self-collaring can also bring comfort, and Rosie brought this up. When you end a relationship, you still feel connected. Like, I'm connected to my submission now. And right now I'm taking care of myself, but I will allow someone else to replace this collar. But I do think it also adds to confusion. And of course, we don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. This is not a call out moment. This isn't me coming in and be like, you're ruining the lifestyle. I just feel like it's kind of like putting water in ice cream. Ice cream's so good all by itself. Why are we putting water? And I want everyone to be represented and comfortable. I absolutely do, but I don't feel that way right now. I don't feel like people are really being represented by that. I think they're wanting to feel included when they feel like they can't be included, because that was also something Em pointed out. Because when you don't have a top, are you truly a submissive? And that's an interesting comment in itself. You have submissive leanings, but currently you're not one. So it's going to always be, I think, something of an irksomeness to me, but I don't know if I'll ever be like, oh, no, self-collaring is great. Like I said, someone says...
No, I don't think... I mean, I don't... Because of when you came up and the level of reverence that it had back then, I don't see it being something that's an easy shift, because you're literally going from, like... Literally, like, this is literally saying you are... you know, that you're basically married. I don't know. I don't know how else you want to put it. You are claimed by someone to basically like, oh, either you just like the way it looks, or you want people to know you're into the bottom role and things that come with it. It's kind of a weird shift to have in 20, 30 years.
Yeah, and it's not just that you are claimed, you have given yourself to someone. And that's a beautiful moment of collaring that I think doesn't get represented when we say self-collaring. And I'm not hating. I promise. Not. I am. There are moments when I get romantic with BDSM. Generally don't. But there's like the personal me, not the educator, but the personal me. It takes a lot to build a dynamic. It takes a lot to have good energy going to get to a point where you want to collar someone and call them your own. So much negotiation, so much trouble to go through. And here comes someone while you're sitting down talking about how your experience and how you built something with someone, and someone goes, oh, I just self-collared myself today. And they're new to the scene. I think it bothers me so much more when it's like the person who just bought the collar and the entire outfit. You can smell the hot topic on them, because it's not the real stuff that people who've been around for like a decade are buying. It's not real corsets. It's like, and Hot Topic used to be hot with like corsets, but now they're cheap, like throwaway.
Yeah.
Shit. So I'm hating on Hot Topic for a good reason, because it is Temu bullshit. It's that Bing or whatever it is, Bang site thing, you know?
Yeah.
it just, every time I turn on the computer, I feel like someone's taken something of ours and watered it down. And self-collaring, that came out of nowhere. I can't see any, I don't think anyone was talking about self-collaring even 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they were.
Oh, they were?
It was around when I was first coming into the idea of, so self-collar or self-owned sub was the two, like, those are the two ways I hear it that essentially mean kind of the same thing.
Okay.
Right. And I think take away the title or the phrase you use. I think the concept of being in a place in your life where, while being a submissive, you realize you are not in a place where being in a dynamic with another person is good for you is fine. It is okay. That is a level of self-awareness many can only strive to have. And if you still need kind of something, because like you said, are you really a submissive if you don't have a dominant? I feel like absolutely. You can be a submissive without a dominant, because to me, at the end of the day, it's really about a headspace. You can be in service to other things. You can be in service to your community. You can be in service to your own goals, right? It's not necessarily dominant, but if that's the twist on it, you need to kind of help you get through it, go for it.
And I had a friend who, sorry.
No, go.
I had a friend who lost her dominant a while back in our local community, and they were self-collared for a long while. And it was a slave master dynamic. So going from all of that structure to no structure, that was kind of her way of holding herself accountable through that phase of her life.
I'm sure it gave a level of comfort to not, yeah. That, and you know, that's one of the things that people really don't talk about. Either don't know that they should set up for if they're getting in a dynamic, or don't talk about that they have plans for if something were to suddenly occur. Because especially if you're in a 24/7 TPE, to have such an unfortunate thing rip somebody so close to you away, like you'd almost need that plan to step through that loss, that sudden loss of structure.
And that is a more interesting 24/7 thing that I had heard Evie talk about, where there are people who are apparently consent watchers. So there's a better word for it, but someone who's basically set up to make sure that everything it's an ethical something. Oh man, I gotta go back and watch that.
It's basically like kind of a guardian that kind of helps look over, especially a submissive, if their dominant is suddenly not in their life. Is that what you're getting at?
Well, no, this is during the dynamic. So they literally sit down and watch the relationship from afar. Kind of like the idea I had for the community, where you are someone I asked, can you watch over the community with me if there's ever an issue, step in? Kind of that idea.
Yeah.
So basically, she talked about that same person sits down and talks about exit strategies. So especially if you're doing a TPE or a 24/7 and finances get involved and all that, how do you untangle that if you get to a point where you are at the point of ending a dynamic? And remember, there are people in 24/7s. They will go to your munches. They will go to a dungeon and talk about how it's TPE this, TPE that. And behind closed doors, they're in a therapist office trying to make their relationships work. There is the public facing of what we see. And then suddenly, oh, I can't believe they broke up. It's the Facebook idea. Everyone posts all the great photos of everyone smiling. What they don't show you is those ugly fights happening behind closed doors.
Well, and not even on the fights behind closed doors. They don't tell you the discussions and the negotiations that they maybe had to make it successful. Like maybe they do have a fact of in the TPE, the dominant is now financially contracted, and I do mean contracted in a legal sense, to provide some sort of retirement, monthly payment into a retirement or something for their submissive. If they've decided TPE means that they are a stay-at-home sub, basically, right? A lot of those real important for self-care, self-protection don't always get brought up and in public facing value because they're not sexy and hot.
And that's the one time you can have a contract. It's not a BDSM contract, but it's a contract for end of relationship, which gives someone a parachute. Call it the golden parachute contract, which is, ladies and gentlemen, legally enforceable. It's an end of a relationship contract as well. So those are all great things. The end of this, I think it's going to come down, because we're reaching the end of the program for today. I do think this comes down to people's personal comfort. We have had the collar situation watered down. We've touched on that. You can't not say it isn't. When it's on Disney, there's a problem where it is that. And Amazon Chick had mentioned to us that newbies might just not have the different meaning because they're so unaware of the history, because the Disney Channel has their main characters wearing it now. My goodness. And Caffeinated Shenanigans has a comment coming in hot, straight from the TikTok. Here we go. I can't believe we're already on for an hour. Yes, that was me. We were 24/7 live-in, and yes, it gets complicated when it ends, because there's the emotional feelings of it, and you will have that ripped away from you. Like, your connection to a person always feels slightly different than your dynamic with the person. It's almost like you are two different people to each other. You're the people outside of play, and you're the people inside of play. And it's a duality that, especially if you have a brat you play with, you try to have fun, you try to be there as humans with each other as well. And there's a lot to lose. It's terrifying to think once you connect with someone that can build that it can disappear, but it does. And yes, we should be prepared for such things, unfortunately, to happen. When it comes to self-collaring, if it makes people happy, who am I to shit on them? I'm not trying to ick anyone's yum, ladies and gentlemen. If it makes sense to you, like, you're not going to see me holding a giant flag that says self-collaring is not legit. You will just probably see me just kind of roll my eyes, like the whole pro-doms. Like, I get it. We're supposed to support sex workers, but you do cheapen what we do in a lifestyle where we build real committed relationships with people. It's just what it is. It's part of this lifestyle now, though, and I won't take anyone's ability to make money as long as they're doing it ethically. So that's all I got for tonight. Sorry about all the issues, ladies and gentlemen. This was a wild 1 hour. Rosie's been in it with me from the beginning. We had to switch even the stream. I had to delete the other one because it got all funky towards the end. And Caffeinated said exactly, the couple dynamic impacts the DS dynamic and vice versa. Absolutely. I want to thank you both. This was it. This is the summer. We're done, TikTok. We have done our summer classes. Starting next week, we're in our fall semester. Buckle up. Time to go to our Kink-Edu campus and join the Kink School. If you guys have a question, because the fall is all about Kink-Edu, it's about bigger ideas, which is what was great starting with this at the end of the summer, to launch and talk about how we're going to be doing that. We're going to stay live over on YouTube for the additional 10 minutes like we always do. Join us if you had follow-up questions. Thank you for being part of this. Good night, TikTok, and we'll see you in the fall. Enjoy Labor Day for those of you who are off, and we will see you all soon. And that is it for now. We had 2 thank yous, and someone, Caffeinated Shenanigans, will be moving over. I don't think anyone changed my mind, but it wasn't one of those topics that was going to be the end-all and be-all, and that's exactly why we didn't actually announce it or make it a FetLife thing. This was really going to be how you feel about collaring, and that Wandering Alice is completely right. I was raised in a different era with kink. It was so much more powerful back then, and then it became a fashion statement. Then 50 Shades of Grey came, then contracts came back. So if it makes someone feel connected with their submission, I support it. And I think that's like, if I'm sorry I didn't say that on the other channel. I should have said that on TikTok, but I do support anyone feeling connected with who they are. And if that collar does that, who the fuck am I to take that from anyone? Alice, did you want to say something? I saw you unmuting a minute ago. I think Alice walked away for a minute. Maybe that's why they unmuted. Rosie, did anything change your mind tonight? Did you feel like you kind of gained perspective on something through this conversation?
I feel like I gained a little bit on the people who are dead set against it, solely because it has a lot of the parts of it have become just fashion. And there are some people who are like that friend of mine that I was talking about, who have been through something super traumatic, and that's their way of doing it. And it is still, like you said, very romanticized in its own way. But it's lost a lot of its meaning to some people.
And look, man, the therapeutic aspect, you have to acknowledge that. I don't think we acknowledged it enough, because it's not really something we should talk too much about, other than just acknowledging it. If it's therapeutic for you to get over something that traumatically happened to you, and you're regaining the control, that is absolutely 100% valid. And again, I'm not trying to ick anyone's yum. If you feel you need that, please have that in your life. Alice, did you come back to us?
Yeah. Sorry, I got a phone call and figured I'd put myself on mute while I dealt with that. So, yeah, I mean, that's one of the things. I think at the end of the day, unfortunately, with how all over the place so many things have become in kink, definitions, phrases, even symbols like collars, it's going to come down to what you and anybody you're with decide for yourselves. What is that level of importance for you and your partner or partners?
Absolutely. I'm going to leave this right now with you for a minute. I guess got to go tell my son something. I don't think you heard that we were talking about the aspect, because this was very early on the kind of history of it. I'm curious when you both first heard about collaring, and how was it explained to you?
No. Rosie, would you like to go first, or?
I can. For me, I was introduced directly into the community. I decided to explore a little bit more what it was right around the time that 50 Shades came out. I'll admit that. Quickly learned that that was wrong. Um, but I started like doing research, found FET, did all of that, and immediately got tossed into a wonderful community out here, which I'm grateful for. And it was explained to me as a wedding ring. That's exactly how it was explained. So it was the
Yeah.
same concept as like pretty much what he was saying.
Yeah. So I got into lifestyle probably in like the very early 20 teens, like 2010, 2011, 2012, like very early. And I had kind of come across a multitudinal things. I don't remember the exact moment when collaring was first introduced to me, but I kind of at the same time got oh, it's just a symbol of submissiveness, as well as the whole like deep reverence wedding kind of meaning at the same time. And um as I got into the community, I came across a large birth of people using it. Some people using it as that like wedding ring with the very fancy rolled metal, like permanent and or locking on collar, as well as plenty of people who just kind of wore a collar because they like the way it looks. It was probably 3 or 4 years after that I came across the concept of self-collaring or self-owned sub, and was kind of looking into that to understand that, because that is to me about, at least that's when it came across my radar as a thing. I don't know if that's when it first started, but a lot of it originally was behind the submissives who hadn't found their dominance yet, and trying to get in that submissive headspace while not having a dominant to play with. And so, I
haven't
personally
really
have always
given
liked the romanticized version, though.
it same. And I hadn't really given it much thought at all until that did happen in our community. And then it was like, oh, this can mean a lot more than just a symbol of submit, you know.
Yeah.
But I hadn't personally thought of it until that happened to her, and then I was like, oh, okay, there's this whole other meaning it can take on.
Yeah. Well, and even in that, to me, I mean, if they called it self-collaring, completely fine, but to me, it almost feels like just almost like for lack of the right term, but it almost sounds like a widowing kind of thing. Like just having that period where, you know, I feel like that's something we do terribly today that I wish we could bring back, is the whole idea of like being in mourning, in the sense of having a visible cue for others to see. Like you used to wear black or various outfits, you know, Victorians had their whole code where you could see that somebody was in mourning. And it would almost be nice if we had something similar for that today, both in vanilla society and even in the kink one.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because I mean, anyone new coming in who didn't know her wouldn't have known, you know,
Right.
that was going on in her personal life. Granted,
And it's,
obviously, she wasn't there very often during that, but
yeah. Well, and also maybe, you know, to each their own. Some people don't want people acknowledging that they're processing grief, or, you know, it's such an individual, personal thing.
when I know
If,
when I first joined, that was like right after it happened, and I had no clue for a couple of years that she was even self-collared. I just assumed her person wasn't there and didn't ask questions.
yeah. Well, and I feel like that's the one thing that, like, I've been trying to do a little more research into the difference between kink in the gay culture and kink in the cis het culture, especially mostly in the het culture, because that is typically what I'm around, is more of a hetero type kink environment. It's not
I'm around both.
anti-LGBTQ. It's just where I live is pretty filled with the hetero, and or the hetero passing, I'll say too. And I feel like that's something I've come across that we just don't do as well as they do in the gay community, especially gay kink community. It's just in that very initial or very early on in your interaction with someone, kind of do that initial work list, checklist kind of comparison of like, you know, instead of trying to assume somebody's a role, just literally straight up going and asking, you know, what role, what are you into, what are you looking for, you know, just hitting that checklist to just very quickly find out, are we compatible or not. It we don't have that same kind of like, well, let's just get the paperwork out of the way first to make sure it's even worth having the deeper conversation. um and I feel like that's also partly where the collar is more of a symbol of being a submissive person has kind of come up. People just
Yeah,
don't ask enough questions.
they really don't. And like I've seen it as a leader, like watching scenes where people just don't ask enough questions prior to a scene, and then I'm going, you know, as the DM.
Yeah,
Um, and that happens because people don't think, they don't ask, and then stuff goes sideways.
yeah,
Luckily, we have a very good community. We haven't had a problem really, but
yeah.
it
But you
can
could
happen.
also kind of, if you've seen enough scenes in person, you can kind of catch the vibe if like they were not necessarily wrong as in non-consent. We're not talking about going and violating consent, but like the vibes were just a little off. Like somebody was maybe looking for like a soft, sensual vibe, and the other one was looking more for like the structured, like I am the top, you are the bottom kind of role. I know I've seen that, and it's not necessarily an immediate abort, but you can just kind of read that the vibes aren't quite aligning.
Yeah, we just had a conversation with one of our leaders. He did a 101 class on the dungeon. That was the first thing he said was like, read the room. There's people you're gonna be watching that are gonna be like sitting there and everyone's gathered together and like goofing off and having a good time and like laughing together, talking, whatever. And then there's gonna be other ones that like don't interrupt, leave them alone, you know.
Yeah.
And that comes across in so many spaces in there. Even and as a DM, you can sit there and go, "Yeah, that's okay," you know, a couple of times.
I have DM'd. I have definitely sat there and in my head thought, read the room, more than one occasion, uh, in a multitudinal of ways.
Yep.
It
I've done
does.
there.
Hmm?
I said I've definitely been there too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like
There have
that's
been a
like
lot of things that I never would have thought I would have found myself in, both in wonderful ways and in I would never like to experience that ways. But I'm definitely always learning and seeing new things at play spaces.
Oh yeah, there's always something.
Hey
Like,
guys, can you see the comments that everyone's making?
no.
Let me click on it because I was on the private chat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just as a heads up, I'm having an issue with my son right now. He's having a little bit of an emotional thing. I got to handle that.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
All right, thank you.
So let me go ahead since you brought up the comments and let me read a couple of them. So we have from Shenanigans. I can't highlight them like he does, which is really fun. But the same could be said for kink itself. There are people who have used it, myself, as a therapeutical tool for overcoming trauma. You know, I do think I find a lot of people who will use kink as therapeutic, maybe their entire kink career feels like the wrong term. Kinky journey is a therapeutic journey in and of itself. Others have momentary or scenes that are therapeutic. And I think that's a really valid use for it. But I think the critical thing is to know, even though it's therapeutic, it is not in and of itself therapy. So, use it as what works best for you. But if you're really needing the therapy, please reach out and get therapy. Find someone supportive. I know it can be so hard to find therapists who are kink, not just aware, but kink informed and educated.
I was just gonna say they are out there. I had one for a long while who was, and there were certain outlets that were given to me that were amazing.
Yeah. We need more of them. We really do. Because I've had a kink aware therapist. It's just, they try, but it's not the same as being truly kink educated and informed, or possibly a participant themselves, just having that actual real in-depth knowledge.
I
We
agree.
have, go ahead. Sorry.
That I
Then
agree.
we had Colleen Noonan. I would ask what it means to that quote that person. I think that's the benefit. At the end of the day, it should always be about asking that person you're talking to what they mean. And I don't just mean by like what they mean by collaring. I mean, what do they mean about everything they say? One of the biggest things I tell all new folks coming in and learning how to negotiate is to confirm what somebody's definition of an activity is. Because that can shift. I think the most common example I give is edge play. What do you mean? What does edge play mean to you? Does it mean play that you personally feel is more risky? Does it mean play with things that might have a sharper edge? Does it mean edging as in control of, the big bang, so to say, right? And all of those could be valid possible meanings in someone's head, which is why it's so critical to find out. Because if you're thinking, oh, we're going to do some taboo stuff, yeah, I'm into edge play, let's do, some kidnap scene, and they're thinking edges in like edging, you're going to have two very different scenes playing in your head. You're good. You're gonna be that scene we watch where maybe between the two of you it's still consented to, but we can tell that the vibe just isn't quite there. And to have a more satisfying scene, just make sure you're on the same page.
And that's where those checklists come in big handy. You can find them
But
everywhere.
even with the checklist, I still say confirm definitions, because especially if there's somebody on the newer end of their kink journey, they may not always know. I personally had that experience. And I feel like this is a funny one for the group. I swam in high school and in college, like a swimmer.
So did
And
I.
so I really enjoy water. You can probably see where I'm going with this. But I like water bondage and something I'm into. I falsely assumed that a different kind of activity, water sports, frankly, was water bondage. They are not the same thing. Google that if you would like. But maybe do it on, whatever mode you'd like. Those are in no way the same activity. To each their own on doing either of them. But I falsely said I was into water sports at one point, meaning I was into water bondage. That was a really fun conversation with someone to walk that through, and the realization of like, oh, I should have Googled that definition first.
I've seen that happen too as a DM, where like people think something means one thing and it doesn't, and I've caught it and been like, okay, let's talk.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna keep going to the next one. To me, a sub wearing a collar, whether it be a cell phone sub, a full commitment, or after losing their dom, is about having a constant in their life. I can definitely get on board with that, Catfish Matt. I do think it is a constant for some folks in their life to have that symbol. All right. Caffeinated, I agree. The LGBT community in general is much more straightforward about those personal questions than the hetero community. And I wish the hetero communities would get on board with that, because I feel like it would destigmatize a lot of really important conversations and prevent a lot of miscommunication or possibly harmful assumptions. The amount of people who have assumed on one thing or another is painful.
Well, and that lines up with what he was saying the other day about making sure, like, the assumptions with, male big dom guy, female submissive, and stuff like that. If you take the gender regardless completely out of the conversation, whether it's a hetero space or not, it gets rid of a lot of the assumptions.
Yep. And I
They
think
have to
that's
ask.
partially, yeah. I do sometimes think that's why we do so poorly with it, is because of the gender-based assumptions that we see in the hetero community that I feel like for a multitudinal of reasons they've gotten away from in the gay communities. And I really hope that we can get there too in the hetero spaces.
I agree.
Or I'll say more hetero, because even the ones are not in any way exclusive or exclusive to LGBTQ. Okay. Caffeine Shenanigans has a few, so I'll read the next couple as well. Yes, you can see there's a mismatch in their expectations or vibes. You totally can if you've been around watching scenes long enough. And then they also said, exactly, mine started out as a way to overcome trust issues, but that's not why I stayed on the path. My reasons changed over time. I think reasons changing over time is probably the most common thing in kink. You get into it for one reason, and then over time you either add more reasons or they shift.
I know as I learned in the community, I got a lot of shifted reasons for a lot of what I do.
Mm-hmm. Very few people, when I say committed, I mean very few people who are committed to the lifestyle. And when I say committed to it, I mean make it a priority in their own personal life. They themselves are committed to a kinky lifestyle. Very few people who do that stay stagnant for long in a kinky space, because a lot of people who have committed that kink is a priority for them, they're constantly trying to gain more knowledge and insight and better themselves to be a better kinky community member, a better kinky play partner, a better person. And I feel like very few people stay stagnant at all. And I feel like those who are really committed to never growing, never changing, don't actually stay around for long, because they get made very uncomfortable quick. And it's not in a we're forcing you out way. It's just, I feel like kinksters as a whole prefer to be around people who are open to new ideas and having their opinions and thoughts changed as they're presented evidence worthy for them to change it. I know what, yeah.
I feel like the ones we've had around like that did phase out on their own. And it was because we were like, okay, but you're not necessarily going about this the right way, and here's why.
Yeah.
And eventually they just kind of disappeared. We're like, okay, you know? And I've
Yeah.
seen it time and time again where that happens.
Yeah, I tend to see the folks that come thinking that it's just access to humans, especially for sexual reasons, they tend to phase out because very quickly people kind of pick up on that energy, and it's not often what folks are really looking for. There are other adult clubs out there in the US if your goal is sexual encounters. And I'm not
I've
judging
had them
that at
come to
all, but
Muncie.
that's not kink. Kink is not inherently sexual.
And I've had people come to Munches doing that where they're like, oh, well, we want to meet Rosie. And you can tell they want to
Yeah.
try to get me to play with them right out the gate. And I just won't go to that Munch. I'll let the guys handle it. I'll stay home.
Yeah.
And then they're
I
like, oh, and they won't come back.
yeah. I've definitely in a group I lead, seen people that came thinking it was access or it was strangers coming for encounters of that nature, and they get there and they realize it's really not, and they typically don't come to another one. You know, it's just not the
Well, and it's
vibe of what
bizarre
they're
for
looking
me.
for. Hmm?
It's bizarre for me, especially in our community, that happens because we have a woman who leads Kinky speed dating. I forget we're not on the other one, and I don't need to vet myself.
Yeah, you don't need to.
But
That's an interesting concept, to each their own. As a demisexual human, that sounds awful for
I
me.
don't want it either because I'm also demi. But it exists, and it's like, okay, if you're really coming here just to pick up with me, there's a whole night for that over there. Like, if
Yeah.
you just go, but
Yeah.
they won't.
Yeah. We got an agreement from Caffeinated Shenanigans. I agree, you learn and grow and evolve. And then Catfish Matt, I'm always open to new things, a new idea. And I think that's what, for me, is probably the best part about a good community space, is one that feels open and welcoming and interested in hearing new ideas.
He's one of mine, actually. He's one of the ones from my local.
Mm,
So,
that's
yeah,
fun.
definitely. It it makes a difference when you're in a space that is 100% open with you. Like ours, prior to every party, we do education, and the education is free.
I think it's so critical. I'm currently not at a community play space. I'm just joining social events. But I think it's so critical that if you're going to have any kind of play party or play space, that you have the education go hand in hand with it. Because without the education, you really can't guarantee the safety of your patrons. And by patrons, I just mean the people coming to your events.
Sorry, the cat's trying to jump on me. Yeah, and then we have Sundays during the day. We also let TNG come in for education, and
You
they
guys
will
have a
cover like a
TNG?
wide variety.
Now, is it a TNG
The teachers
offshoot? Whoops, sorry. Is it an offshoot TNG from your group, or is it an entirely separate group and you just support them?
They're completely separate. Actually, MCAT came after TNG. Some people aged out and wanted to create their own group,
Yeah.
and that's where MCAT came in. I became a leader after it was created.
Yeah.
We're still like best friends with the lady who leads it, but she heads that up and does a wonderful job and does education days for the younger community.
Mm,
And
mm.
there's not a party afterwards; it's all education.
That's really interesting. I
Yep.
originally started actually in a TNG group and quickly grew out of just the TNG to other things. I've seen other community spaces where their TNG is a sub much of their overall group as well. So just varies.
Yeah, I said, yeah, no, not us. And I actually also started at that TNG group as well. And it was an amazing way to like learn and grow as a community member.
Caffeine shenanigans. Yeah, I saw that a lot back in the day. People showing up thinking it was a sex party and not realizing kink is not the same arena, and they would leave and not come back. And that's kind of the thing is, I think that's the unfortunate part is they show up and it, like, depending on what's going on, it's like a little awkward for almost everybody, and then they never come back, which isn't necessarily a terrible thing that they never come back, but it's also if you had just done a little more research, you actually maybe wouldn't have come at all. So we'll see. I don't unfortunately think it's something we'll ever get entirely away from.
Yeah, I agree. You can't, unfortunately, there's no standard for some of these things, and there should be, but there's not.
Yeah, we've so the one thing we have coined is the creepy people, the creepy aunt, the creepy uncle. We're like, they're not technically breaking any rules, but they're just doing things in a creepy way. And how do you handle that? Because they technically haven't broken any of your rules that mean they should be banned, but also you feel not good about letting them stay if you organize a group or, yeah.
So we actually have a dungeon space and a social space.
Mm-hmm.
So I've not dealt with it often, but I have been a distraction a couple of times where I'm like, hey, come out here in the social space and talk to me. And I've pulled them away from said space. I've only had to do that once, but it has happened. Where I'm like, oh, hey, or let's go out to the fire pit and talk. Because our club is way up in the woods. And I'll do that sometimes where I'm like, hey, let's go outside.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can distract them away from the play space to change the vibe in there, I will.
Now, is it usually you trying to get the creepier person away, or is it you trying to get somebody they were talking to away?
Usually the creepy person. Because the only time that's happened to me, the other person was actively playing.
Okay. I can understand that. That's always a tough spot to be in a
Like
play space for
awkwardly
sure.
watching. It was more of an awkwardly watching situation when I handled it. So I was like,
Yeah.
hey, let's go outside and chill, you know. But it worked. It got them away from the space.
I
Like, I'll start a
I have definitely run interference, as I call it, before in spaces for various reasons, one or another. But and that's what's so hard is ideally you'd have a space where you don't have to run interference, and how do you get there? I'm trying to think. Does anyone have any other comments or questions about anything or the collaring topic we were talking about? Because I'm also like trying to think of bringing it back towards that. But here's you know what I haven't ever seen, and I'm wondering if you've ever had this experience, Rosie. Have you ever actually been at like a collaring ceremony? Ever come across one?
I've had my own.
Okay.
But I've never like watched one.
Yeah. They don't happen often, at least like in my area. But then again, the people that I call my kinky friends, like my actual close like friends, that are kinky and in the same community spaces, they also kind of have the whole reverence for collaring. So I just don't think it's something that would happen quickly or lightly.
yeah, I think that's part of it too. And I know for a lot of people that become private ceremonies. So I know that as far as in the play space, I've not seen that happen.
Yeah. Well, and I think that varies so much. I'll say couple just because typically a collaring is a couple, but couple to couple, whether they want it to be a truly private thing or they want to do it like at their local group's play party. Colleen Newman was just asking, are collaring events always public? No, they are not. No, they are not. They can vary greatly. They can literally just be between those two people in their own home or own space that's special to them, or they can be an event for their local community space, and they set it up almost like basically a wedding ceremony kind of a thing too. I've heard and seen photos of like kind of all of those across the board. So, Caffeinated Shenanigans asked, I've been looking for a local community not to find play partners or a play base. I think they meant play space. But because I want to socialize with like-minded people and speak freely about subjects you can't with no is people. I'm going to say normal people is probably the statement.
All right, everybody. I have to actually close the program now. Things got crazy at my house. It's been that day. We're wrapping up the summer. I'm going to go get a shovel and take care of some problems. I will see you all soon. Thank you for all being part of our summer of education. We're going to the fall, and it's all about Kink-Edu. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Rosie. Rosie, right? I'm saying that right? I'm so dyslexic. I have to go finish life. I'll talk to you all later. I know.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.